We're here with F1 2017, the next annual racing title from Codemasters, and I'm here with Lee Mather, the creative director from Codemasters, flown in from England just for this. So Lee, how are you today?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I wouldn't miss it.
Perfect. Well, we just recently announced F1 in the past month, and this is really the first time we're showcasing gameplay here.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got a few bits to show people today, give them a taster of what to look forward to in F1 2017.
You're so modest.
Well, yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Plenty to talk about.
So that kind of brings us into things with F1, because obviously this is a sports style. This is based off the real world sport of F1 and the annualized circuit and championship every year for the sport in general. And F1 is the official license. F1 2017 is the official licensed F1 game.
It is. Yep.
So since 2016, there have been a lot of changes in the sport. So can you walk me through a little bit of those changes?
Yes, I mean, probably the most prominent ones have been the width of the tyres and the width of the actual cars themselves increased, which obviously has also increased the weight of the vehicles. So the physics has had a total overhaul again to accommodate that. So the balance between the aerodynamics and the tyre grip is now very different. The behaviour of the car is very different, and it makes for a different on-track experience as well.
Perfect. I know that you guys take obviously the physics and everything, since this is a simulation, very seriously. So when things like that affect the grip and the tire and the tires on the track are changed in the rule set, how do you go about from a development process? Is it do you meet with the individual teams to get their feedback? Talk me through how you develop to make this as true to life as possible.
So, I mean, we start off with, we know what the rules are that the teams have to build their cars to. So that's a really strong starting point. You know, we know how wide a tyre is, we know how heavy a car is, we know sort of roughly the weight distribution. And then we'll scrutinise the footage, we'll watch the tests, we send the guys out to the tests. I mean, one of our lead handling guys, David Greco, went out and actually stood at the track at Barcelona and watched the cars and listened to the way they changed gear and looked at how they changed direction, because that's a large part of it, is how you see that car handling on the circuit. You know, we replicate that in the game.
Perfect. And F1, for those not familiar, obviously is the fastest sport in four wheels.
Yeah.
And this is, you replicate that true to form with this. So let's go ahead and show some gameplay here. Lee is going to take us through a couple of the tracks. Last year was a big year. Like I said, 2016 changed a lot. You added, as a sport, they added Baku and Azerbaijan, which has some of the longest straights in all of F1.
Yeah.
So this year, what can fans look forward to?
So, I mean, obviously last year, probably the biggest thing we did was the overhaul to the career. You know, it was absolutely enormous. So while I talk about that, I'll get a 2017 car on track, because I think people will want to see that go round.
But you mentioned 2017 car on track,
Yeah.
because in F1 2017, you guys are doing something new.
We are. So I'll start with the overhaul to career this year has been to firstly address some of the things that the fans really wanted last year. So first up, I mean, you would have seen there that I'm playing as a male avatar. You know, we've added female avatars to the game this year. So because we do have a lot of female fans who love the sport and they want to play the game. So, you know, that was something we always wanted to try and do, and we've managed to achieve that this year.
So there's no hard rule in F1 as a sport that there are no female drivers, is there?
No, and there's been female test drivers up to now. And I'm sure that it's only a short matter of time now before one of them actually makes it into the sport, you know, fully. So that was just one of the things that we wanted to do to give people more, you know, attachment to the game. And then obviously last year we had a really in-depth career. You know, it was a 10-season career with a really nice R&D system in there where the player took part in practice programs to earn R&D points to improve their vehicle.
So you mentioned kind of the dedication of Codemasters fans and how much they play these games and at what length. Last year we had a 10-season career mode that people, or 10-year career mode that people could play.
Yeah.
The R&D system is so intricate. It's almost they're almost RPG, like significant RPG elements.
Yeah.
To it.
So this year, last year was quite a linear system. This year, it's very much an R&D, a very wide-ranging sort of skills tree system almost. So the player can choose the path that they take the car. So it's a case of, you know, you can start working on a certain area and then you'll hit an upgrade that's obviously going to cost you significantly more to develop. But also upgrades can fail. You know, they're not necessarily guaranteed to be successful. So that's where the player can also look at improving areas of the team so that the R&D upgrades are delivered either earlier or you know, with a level of reliability that they might not have had previously. So it gives the player a really totally open experience with that, and they can, you know, take a team from the bottom to the top, and they can do it how they choose to do it.
Speaking of coming from the bottom to the top, I know that Haas was a new team last year, an American team. Where do you see the standings this year as a sport, and how does that influence and how does that affect the actual game when you're able to play it in August?
I think the most noticeable thing this year is that Ferrari are really competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's brilliant to have two teams really mixing it up at the front, and also the Red Bull team. You know, they're traditionally been very, very strong. The car's obviously a great chassis. They still are developing the engine further. You know, I think it's only a matter of time before we have three front-running teams. The difference in the midfield is that everybody's really closed up. You know, the racing in the midfield is incredibly close, and that's something that we replicate very closely in the game. We spend a lot of time scrutinising the results, looking at the lap times, looking at the placements, and we replicate that in the game.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are obviously fans that want the simulation, that want to be able to play and simulate the season, the real sport. But for those that want to just enjoy the exhilaration of racing, but want to do it in another way, are there ways that they can experience tracks outside of the way they would normally see them represented on TV?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a few things we've done this year which will mix the experience up a little bit for players. So I think obviously the first one and the most obvious one is that we've introduced some classic cars to the game, some absolutely iconic cars from the world of Formula One. We've got obviously the 2010 Red Bulls in there at the moment. We've announced that. We've got the selection of Ferraris, and the player can use that content in so many different ways.
Well, we just announced a new car today, right?
We announced some Ferraris today, a selection of Ferraris that are going to be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And what we wanted to do with the classics was, we know how much everybody plays the career. We know how important that is to people, and they don't want to take part in the career and then have to leave that part of the game to go and do other things. They want to be bettering and improving their career. So the classic cars are also featured throughout there. So as last year we introduced two characters to the game who lead you through your career. They deal with your contracts, they deal with your R&D. We've now got a guy who's a bit of a rich guy. He swans into the hospitality, and he's got an air of sort of confidence about him. And he's a guy who owns a selection of classic cars. And what he does is he comes and invites you to drive his cars, on weekends where there's no races, and is to go and take part in different types of racing, different styles of racing. So it's very much like modern day, sort of a Goodwood Revival, Goodwood Festival of Speed style event. He'll invite you to either do like a pursuit where you have to chase down slower cars in a really fast Formula One car.
So essentially you guys added story mode elements to have the classic cars make sense within the overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much what you see in real life. You regularly see the drivers on their off weekends taking part in other events, driving classic cars that, people from the same team would have driven in previous years. So we wanted to make that a big part of the career. It impacts on your perception with the team, it impacts on your how the fans perceive you. So obviously your overall rating in the team can be affected by how you perform in these events as well.
Well, the track looks gorgeous. You've done significant improvements even from last year. Can we show just some of the lighting and some of the different tracks?
Let's pick. So something which you can see here as I flick through these menus,
which
I'll highlight, is that there's a Bahrain short there. So in order to really make great use of some of this new content we've got in there, we've also added in some short circuit layouts to mix things up a little bit. So because we've got these different styles of gameplay, such as the pursuit or the time attack style gameplay. We wanted to change some of the circuits a little bit as well and give sort of a snappier sort of style. So as you can see there's a Bahrain short circuit, there's also an Austin, Texas short circuit, and we've got a couple more which we're yet to announce. So again, it's something new and something fresh to the series that we've never done before.
And this is content that fans of F1 would never be able to experience otherwise.
Certainly not in an official Formula One game.
Right.
It's the first time we've been able to do this, and it really does mix things up again. It keeps it feeling different, feeling fresh every year, and also they can use the classic content outside of the career as well. So you can use it in time trial, you can use it online, you can use it in the Grand Prix mode, and what we've done to allow the players to really get the most out of them in online games, for example, they can run any of the classic cars. There's no team structure in that anymore. So instead of having to worry about two people driving the same car, you can actually have a whole grid of the same car if you choose to do so. And we create different styles of racing with spec racing, so it's all the same car, or racing classes within races. So there's two classes. So there's the super fast guys in the C1s and the slightly slower cars in the C2s. So you can use all of the classic content together on track at the same time and get a different experience.
Now, obviously, when you have the driving line on right now, which is kind of an aided assist to help you along the track. In the last year, you were using gates as a training mode to train around laps. Is there any more content like that to help maybe ease new players into the game? Or
So the gates were used in the practice programs last year, and in one of the new game modes, which I will happily show you now, we've actually got a slightly different application for them, and this is one of the classic challenges, which will be available throughout the career, but also can be played outside of the career as well. So you can go back and replay them and try and do better, or experience them again. So I'll show you how that works now. So Championships is a new feature in the game, which we're going to talk about post E3.
Okay.
But at the moment, these are just two of the challenges that the player will be able to experience. They're set up to be a little bit easy for the show, so people can get to grips with the game. So there's a checkpoint challenge, and this is in the 2010 RB6. So this is something different, something we've never done before in the game.
This is the Red Bull, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I mean, the audio for these is something that we've thoroughly enjoyed listening to. So I sit not far from the audio guys, and they're forever coming over and going, "You've got to come in and hear this. You've got to come in and hear this." And they'll play me a video of the reference stuff that they've got to work from, and then they'll play me the samples, and then they'll say like, "Right, this is the final mix." And we've been stood there, and it's sort of the hair on your arms standing on end. It's just absolutely scintillating.
Because you guys obviously take huge pride in creating this as realistic as possible, from the sound to the track layouts to the lighting, everything from the individual grip on the tires in different weather conditions.
Yeah.
Everything from the view when you're setting up. You mentioned the paddock earlier. That's something that was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was first brought into the game last year as like an individual environment.
Yeah.
So you're continuing to expand on that to offer that. But sorry.
Yes, I mean, but back as you say for the paddock there. So people love the world of Formula One, not just the on-track excitement.
Right.
There's so much glamour, there's so much glitz that goes on away from the circuit. And last year we built the environments for the agent to work in and for the R&D guy. And this year we've expanded that. I mean, something which we always found quite amusing was that if you did particularly badly and you were disciplined or sacked from your career, she did it in public. So now we've built the agent a nice office. So she works from the office, and we've got the upstairs place in the hospitality is now a different location. That looks really cool. And we've also modelled the back of the garages, at the back of the garages where they have the lorries. The large vehicles where they work on the telemetry and things like that. We've now modelled that area as well, so that's where the player can then go and deal with R&D and speak to his R&D guy.
So you were mentioning that obviously there's a huge amount of kind of a manager metagame within this. There's obviously the racing component, and then there's a managerial aspect of you have a team, you have a career, you have sponsorships that you have to maintain, and if you don't perform for those individual teams, then they can drop you as a driver.
Yeah, and you could end up looking for a drive with a lesser team, or you might look in and somebody might actually have quite liked how you're performing, and that's something that you can really pay more attention to in this year's game. You can actually follow your performance with the other teams as well, so you can see who thinks you're doing well, who's gelling with you, and so you might be looking for a drive for Ferrari, and you can see that they're not interested in you as you're doing at the moment. So yeah, their requirements might be slightly different.
So you've switched between a couple of different camera views here. This is obviously the kind of the head cam, the in-cockpit. I'm trying not to make you toggle between them as you're taking a corner. But yeah, can you walk me through the different camera views that you can do, and then we can talk about the different wheels that support. How can people experience this game in a broader spectrum?
So I think firstly one of the coolest things is the hardware compatibility this year. We're actually already showing at E3 on Xbox X. So I think that's pretty special that we're showing this early in the hardware life cycle for 4K, HDR, 60 frames per second. We're obviously supporting PS4 Pro.
That's incredible. You're running at full 4K Ultra HD at 60 frames per second with this game. Pre-launch of the hardware. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it looks incredible. We've been able to turn up some of the options, make the mirrors more impressive, better shadows. It's generally just given the game a really nice visual uplift. We're also obviously continuing to support more hardware, so the wheel support's increasing. There's a lot of wheels coming out these days. I think it's an area which is really starting to expand. People are taking their racing games very seriously these days. So it's great for us and it's great for them. It's just growing the market for everybody. So that's really cool. So as you saw there, that was one of the little bite-sized challenges that we've set up, and these are the things you'll get invited to do throughout the career.
Okay.
But also, you can go and challenge yourself and do them separately as well through the championships.
Now, what's your reward for doing these individual challenges?
So during the career, it will feed into how you're perceived by the other teams, and also it'll give you R&D as well in some way. So depending on what you're doing, the team can always gain some sort of information, and it will give you a little boost to help you, better your team and better your standings.
Now, obviously, how long have you been working on F1 and at Codemasters?
I joined in 2008, and I've worked on every game since then.
That's incredible. So you've worked on every single F1 game since 2008, and so there's a huge amount of leaps and bounds since that was back in Gen 7 days there to what you're seeing now.
Yeah.
Over the years, what's been kind of the most significant improvement that you can touch on?
I think, for us personally, I think that it's probably in the physics. So having that extra power of this generation of console allowed us to really nail that on-track feeling, the feeling of tyre on road.
Right.
That was the important bit. But also, you look at the visual fidelity. It's starting to reach levels now where, if you're stood just a few meters away from the screen, you're not sure if it's game or if it's real life. It's really that impressive to look at. So I think visually and physically, those are two of the areas that have taken leaps and bounds. But also, you look at the characters there around the car. It's all the things that we're able to give a really strong representation of the sport in the game.
So that just plays into this being a sports simulation, not just on track. You send people to the individual tracks to mirror the individual experience.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about, whether it's in the paddock, whether it's in the garage, whether it's around the racetrack. So working with Formula One over the years has definitely been great. So can you talk to me a little bit about how it being an international sport influences the development of this?
So I think the thing with Formula One is it's got a very strong following in Europe, and through the game we've actually been able to really widen that as well throughout the world. And obviously now there's a lot of interest over here. There's the Haas team, there's American races. Fernando recently came over and did Indianapolis. I think there's starting to become a real crossover in all of these forms of motorsport, and it's great that we can be part of that, because the gaming audience is quite different to the audience who watch these sports. So there's a real crossover between the guy who loves the sport and doesn't really play the game, and then we can bring them into gaming, or we can bring the gamer into the sport.
Is this late afternoon, or is this early morning? I can't tell.
I think this is an afternoon one.
Right.
And as you can see, we've got it balanced to be quite easy at the moment for the show, so people can get to grips with it. As you can see, we've got some of the classic Ferraris here, and the idea is that I'm in a super dominant 2007 Ferrari, which is up until this year one of the fastest Formula One cars ever built.
Well, I just wanted to comment that I like how Michael Bay joined the team and directed those lens flares earlier. It's really the lighting. I'm glad you chose this, because the lighting is really incredible here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that obviously you're too modest to mention, but you guys make great games, Lee. F1 2016 was a mid-80s Metacritic game.
Yeah.
It's the highest rating F1 game that I think you guys have ever released. And it's just, from the initial looks, initial impressions, you're just building off of that and creating more and more content in 2017.
Oh, definitely. And as you remember, last year we started with some real community feedback. We got the guys in nice and early. They gave us a lot of feedback on what we were doing. We did that even earlier this year. We managed to collate loads of really strong feedback on areas that they felt passionate about just as well, as much as we do. So that's given us the opportunity to finesse the game even more. So talking about building a deeper career, we've added in this year the ability to manage the engine and gearbox. They're such a major component of the sport. It's something we're hearing so much about this season. And we break the engine down into the different components as well, so that the player has to manage certain elements of the car. So it might not be, it might not be a complete engine failure. It could just be one particular area. So we give the player that whole. It's like a management mode within the game as well.
So we've talked about it being a simulation a lot. We've talked about how true to life, how true to form this game is. But take it from the other side. If I'm a novice in the world of F1, how can this game bring me into the world, bring me into the allure of how sexy these cars are and how fast the sports are and everything.
So I think you can probably see from, I'm chatting away to you, and I'm still happily getting around the circuit. I've got a degree of assist on at the moment.
Well, you just mentioned you've worked on the game for 9 years.
Yeah, I can maybe play it in my sleep, but I'm not particularly paying much attention to what I'm doing here on the track, and
right.
yet, the assists are really helping me make those corners. They're really helping me to brake for them. But also we've got the little tutorials in the game as well. And when you first start playing the game, your initial experience has button prompts to help you learn what you're doing as well. It's because there's an element of people who, like I say for example, somebody like my dad who loves the sport of Formula One. He might want to play the game, but he's not a gamer. And we want to be able to enable him to enjoy it just as well.
Perfect.
Let's have a quick look at the replay. We'll take a look at some of these beautiful classic cars.
All right. So can you walk us through what all cars we're going to see on screen here, if you don't
Oh,
mind?
you're going to challenge me now. So the player's driving the 2007 Ferrari. There's the 1992 Williams, and then somewhere in there I think there's a 2002 and a 2004 Ferrari, I believe. I struggle with those two.
I can't challenge you on that information, so I'm going to take you at face value. But yeah, the game looks absolutely stunning, stunningly. This is we're actually really close to launch. We're coming out on August 25th.
August 25th, yes.
And it's a worldwide release,
Yes.
and that's right between two different GPs.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a great time to release the game. There's always a great window where the excitement around the sport's really good. And people, we traditionally look at the stats and you see people always jump straight on the game after the race as well.
Right.
So we can see there's real spikes when it becomes really popular. So we get in so much great support from the teams as well. They're always tweeting about our game. We're always following those guys. And there's a real feeling of the sport's really on the up at the moment. It's getting very exciting.
So Lee, you just mentioned that this game comes out in the middle of the F1 season. So how do you update because there's rule changes, there are different things that happen mid-season, there are team changes. How and when do you keep this game, since it is a simulation, it is a real life license game, how do you keep that current? How do you update post-launch?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on the performance of the cars throughout the season, and if there's any major changes, those are things that we'll certainly address.
Right.
And also, you see the teams regularly change liveries or make changes to the physical, attributes of the car, the model of the car, and those are things that we can patch in, post-launch over the course of the rest of the season. Like we did last year, we want to try and keep the game relevant for as long as possible, make sure that the players experiencing what they see when they watch the sport on TV.
So if Ferrari decides that they're just not going to have their engines work very well anymore, you can nerf those cars essentially in game.
We could adjust performance. We would never touch reliability, so that's something that's in the players' hands. That's how they manage things. It's entirely up to the player. If they got engine problems, that's their problem. That's how they've managed things. They've not developed the right part of the skills tree, for example.
Right.
Maybe they've not worked hard enough on the reliability. Maybe they've concentrated too much on another area. I was going to quickly rewind back and just highlight a bit of a beautiful classic. There it is. So we've got the McLaren. Right, there's the McLaren MP44, and what we've done for that as well, we've added support for a H pattern shifter and clutch as well. That car was a old school, hardcore driven, in that way. So we wanted the player to be able to experience that as well.
Very cool. And this is actually that 44 is part of the Legacy Edition.
So that's the DLC car. It's not DLC. Sorry, that's the pre-order car.
Right, exactly.
So if you pre-order the game, you'll get access to the MP44.
Yeah, so for all physical formats, that is in the Day 1 edition. If you pick up the game on Day 1, you will receive this additional car.
Yeah, and all 12 classic cars, minus the pre-order car, are all on disc. You'll have all of the cars from the beginning, so all 11 teams will be there, plus the McLaren, obviously, if you pre-order.
So very cool. Well, this has been F1 2017. Lee Mather from Codemasters showing off the game. It's coming out on August 25th for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Lee, any parting words before you leave it for all the fans of F1 across the world?
I mean, I'd like to thank everybody for the reception we got last year. 16 did so well. It's given us the standing to build, something even bigger, something even more exciting, and that's been really exciting for us. It's really given us all a great boost. The sport this year, 2017, the cars, that's totally different for us. But bringing in the classics and integrating them into the career in the way we have, I think is something different. It's something unique. It'll really give the players something to get their teeth into.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Kingdom Come Deliverance here on Square Enix Presents.